Good morning, everybody. I'm conscious it's day 3 and I'm between you and your lovely lunch, so I'll start. My name's Ed Baker. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer and a Microsoft most valuable professional. My speciality in that is enterprise mobility, so I love Azure Active Directory and all things identity and management and that sort of stuff. Why am I talking to you today? Well, for a start, I come from the UK. You can probably tell that from my accent. I'm old. I've got 25 odd years in the industry. I spent the last 3 years as a technical evangelist working for Microsoft in the UK. And now I work again for myself, and I do all of those things. You can contact me in any of those ways, should you wish to, about any of the content on this or Microsoft Server, if you like. I have to give a shout out straight away to a chap called Mark Grimes, who's going to do the 534. He presents this regularly, and he created most of this content. I've tweaked it a little bit, but he has spent many, many hours and months building this deck to provide you with the links and the study materials. So big shout out to Mark there. If you have any questions, this is going to be a bit of a whirlwind tour. If you've looked at Azure and the objective domain for this exam at all, you will know there is no way I can go through every object in the next 75 minutes. If I've said something that completely blindsides you or you think I've gone nuts, jump up, ask a question. Please go to the microphone so that everybody can hear it and the people at home and in the rest of Ignite who may be listening can hear it. My objectives are to tell you what the objectives of the exam are, 7533. If you're here for developer or architecture, you've missed one and you're early for the other. This is the Infrastructure Solutions. The deck is a brilliant guide for your studies in future. By the end of it, you should have enough resources to be able to go and prepare and take the exam. Have lots of extra little hints and tips to be able to do that as well. And also, stop press, if you don't take the exam before the middle of October, the content and the objectives and what you are studying will change. So if you think you're nearly ready, do this, do a cert prep test, then go and take the exam, because the exam objectives are changing significantly for October. While I'm on the exams, they change regularly. The last full change was last November, but they changed the exam questions that are no longer valid every month or so. So there are regular updates, new questions and questions removed every couple of months, which is the standard now for all the cloud-based exams. You don't need to take pictures of any of these. The deck is available. The hot links are in the deck. So you open the deck. If you're going to study the deck, study it in presenter mode or in presentation mode so that you see all the animations as well. There's lots of animations in this deck, and you might miss some links and you might miss the ability. So any one of these hyperlinks will take you to the correct page for study. So it's not just a watch and think, it's a watch and do, and you can play along. Very quick hit. And the only reason I'm showing you this is because it changed on Monday. On Monday, they added 537, a brand new exam to the track, which is Azure Stack. It's not been written yet. It's due out in January, February time. And it becomes both part of the MCSA track. So if you take that and one other Azure exam, you get the MCSA. And it is also an elective in the MCSE. And you can now, every 12 months, take one of the electives to give your MCSE a new year badge. Study resources. Other than this deck, the book, study guide. Obviously, if it's a written book, it's not going to be as up-to-date as an online resource, but it is a good resource for the exam. But the best way of studying for this is if you don't have an MSDN subscription or you don't have access to a subscription, get a trial subscription, go and play and do it. Open yourself a OneNote, copy the objective domains into the OneNote, read it. First thing says, create a web app. Go and do it. Check every option, check every setting, screenshot them, put your own links to resources in there so you've got a ready reckoner to go back and understand what you've done with your study. It's very easy to do something and think, well, I know where that was, but where the hell was that? I've lost it. If you've screenshotted some stuff into your OneNote, which is the perfect application for doing this, it's well worthwhile. I ought to mention as well, don't just do it in the GUI. The command line, both the cross-platform command line and PowerShell command line are hit very hard in the exams as well. If you only learn doing it in the Azure portal, you will struggle quite strongly in the exam. You need all the methods. And I've said all that. Okay, the exam objectives, it's split up into 6 sections. When you take the exam, you get a printout at the end, or if you take it at home, it goes straight into your email. You get a printout with each of these objectives, how well you've done in each. And it's a good study to tell you how you should be preparing for your next exam if you weren't successful. But more importantly here, it tells you that they're all equal. You will get an exam roughly with the same proportion of questions on each of these topics. Some of them, like the server exams, have areas of 30 to 40%, which you have to study very hard. Here, you can't concentrate on one area on its own. You pretty much have to concentrate on them all equally, which again is a little bit of a distractor because that's unusual as well. First one, deploy web apps. Link there will take you to the app service documentation. There is almost, that's a double negative, everything you are going to need in this exam is available in the Azure docs, the docs.microsoft.com in the Azure section or at azure.com. It links to all of those docs. There's a caveat to that, which is that anything that is so old in the old Azure Service Manager, that might not be there, but it could potentially still have something in the exam. And any of the brand new previews might not be there as well. But 99% of the stuff you need will be documented in the Azure documentation. 4 sections in deploying web apps: deploy, configure, diagnostics, monitoring, and how you scale and make them resilient. Here we've got a number of areas that will trip you up. And just so to reiterate, I'm not going to teach you anything today. I'm going to help you with areas you might need to just double down on and accept you've got to do a little bit more study on, and areas that can trip you up and have tripped me up in the past. So things such as, when you swap slots, what is swapped and what isn't swapped? Perfect example of things you can be asked a question on. Understand, you've got a picture there of what is swapped and what isn't swapped. And again, do everything in PowerShell and CLI as well as the GUI. Really important when you're implementing this stuff is to understand how you can set up a custom domain for it. Whether it be free, basic, standard, or premium, when can you have a custom domain? How many custom domains can you have? How do you create that custom domain? What does Traffic Manager do? How do you get it to work? And then finally, the scaling and securing of it are hit fairly hard as well. There's also a brilliant resource there, the To-Do app. If you click on that link, it'll take you to a practice session which will help you to build an app step by step by step and carry out all of these areas of add a load balancer, add a traffic manager, add security, how to scale it, what's size to make the app. You don't have to go and work out, well, how do I do this stuff? It's built in there in the documentation for you. Understand all about the app service plans, the sizes of them, what you get in each app service plan, the difference between an app service plan and an app service environment. Diagnostics. As with most exams, certainly the server exams, the monitoring and diagnostics is an area that gets forgotten by people when they try and study and is often hit quite hard in the questions, and the questions can be quite tricky because you haven't devoted enough time to study that area. It looks a bit developer to me. So some of this stuff at the top, that's stuff quite complicated. Standard out and standard error streams. There's some Node.js stuff there. And I haven't asked actually, how many of you in the room are out and out IT pros with no developer experience at all? It's about 50%. So the rest of you are either neither or you've got lots of development. Developers in the house? Cool, excellent. Understand how you need to view the streaming logs. Look at them in real time. Look at them through the UI. How you can export those logs. What format those logs come out in. And understand that all your diagnostics are provided by IIS Node as well. Endpoint monitoring. That's a cracking video. Click on that, watch that video, understand how endpoint monitoring works and how it configures the tests, and it uses it from different geographic locations to check that your endpoint is always live. It performs an HTTP GET on the web URL to say what's the response time and what's the uptime from each location. So you can prove that, all of your clients, all of your distributed users can access this website from wherever they are. If the monitoring test will fail, if the response code is 400 or if the response takes more than 30 seconds. So if it returns a 400 or it's a 30-second delay, it effectively says this node is down or this endpoint is down. And to be considered available, it has to succeed on all of the locations you've set the monitoring from. And to set it up, you go into monitoring apps in the Azure App Service. And you can also look at the keeping Azure websites up plus endpoint monitoring on the video. Deployment slots. Understand what deployment slots give you what. What do you get in standard, what do you get in premium. How you swap the slots between each individual environment. What you get with more than one slot, be aware that you cannot change the app service plan. If you've got only one slot, you can change your app service plan. If you've got more than one deployment slot, you have to scale it back down to change the service plan. Moving into a bit of black art with Kudu. The Kudu deployment engine is a separate deployment on each of your web apps. It's not a hosted system that you get individual bits of. Each web app has its own Kudu section. General settings in a web app. You can choose your frameworks. You can choose whether it's a 32-bit or 64-bit platform. And notice that a 32-bit platform is only available in the free or shared platform level, and 64-bit can be basic or standard. And for basic or standard, you can enable always on. So typical question, blah, blah, blah. You've got a web app you want to enable always on, and it'll just give you the slots, what you can do. Be aware when you get questions like that, some of them will be worth 1 point, some of them will be worth multiple points, and it will tell you, because it will say each answer represents part of a solution, or each answer represents the whole solution. Your application logging will last for 12 hours only. And note the folder for your detailed error message. They're saved in log files /detailed errors. And you can download your logs using FTP. Just like that. SSL in the web apps is only available in basic or standard. There are some really good charts in the Azure documentation about what is available in each. Some of them are too big, too detailed, but some of them are quite useful. So what you get at each level of the platform. For custom domain names, I mentioned those earlier, has to be shared basic or standard, so you can't use a custom domain name in the free. And you go and reserve your domain name somewhere, or you already have it. Create your DNS record, and you add the domain in the portal. And again, monitoring is only available in basic or standard.
Excuse me.
Hello.
I know I'm not going crazy. That includes premium too, right? Because there's...
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
At least basic or standard.
All right.
You can get the numbers increase in premium. Yeah, we don't take it off you because you spent more money.
Okay.
Yeah. Much as you think we might. Okay, PowerShell. Who loves PowerShell? Not in lots of hands, but not enough hands. Everything you need to do in the Microsoft world will now be PowerShell. Only the other day they released the Intune PowerShell commandlets, which is an awesome thing. So you need PowerShell and you need the skills and experience in PowerShell to be able to be effective. Forget the exam, you need to use it to be effective if you're going to do anything in an automated way. So the best recommendation I can get to pass any of these exams is learn your PowerShell and learn the commandlets that are available. Here with the Azure RM web app, and notice with Azure, there's Azure web app or Azure X, Azure RM X. The commandlets are split now into RM commandlets and non-RM commandlets. Make sure that when you're answering a question, you're reading it really carefully and you haven't just gone, oh, that's the one, and you've missed the RM out, or it was there and it shouldn't be. Useful to know all the verbs. The exams are not there to trick you. You will never see an answer that is technically impossible to have. Not always the case in the past, but you will now no longer see any answers that are just things that can't happen. They may not be able to happen in the location they're asking for it to happen, but they are technically correct. If you ran that command somewhere, it would work. So they won't put verbs that don't exist, and they won't put nouns and parameters that just seriously just don't exist. You're not allowed to do that when you write the exams. So it's useful to know the verbs, and it's useful to know the nouns, but it's even more useful to know which parameters are in each individual commandlet. Really useful. Quite a lot of the drag and drop and the active screen questions are PowerShell type questions and relate to a drop down of here's 4 parameters, which parameters right for this particular section. Which is why the practice tests are quite useful, because they use some of those as well. And again, the link at the bottom of that screen gives you all of the Azure website commandlets. Okay. Since we've got so many developers in the house, you'll love all this cross-platform CLI stuff. It's been updated greatly. Here's an example of listing the commands available for Azure web apps using the cross-platform command line interface. Call Azure Site H, and it will give you what you need. Of course, with the update now in the portal itself, and I think the PowerShell one has gone into live preview now, you can get the command line direct in the portal. So at the top of your portal, you will have a little cursor. Click on the cursor, it'll open a screen at the bottom. As soon as you do that, it will enable you to, some of your storage space will be reserved in one of your regions to allow you to keep all your storage in there for your command lines. And then you can use a bash command line and use the cross-platform, or you can use a PowerShell command line and use PowerShell commandlets. It was a private preview. I think it's now moved into live preview. So you no longer have to download all this stuff to be able to use it directly into Azure. So as far as web apps are concerned, the 5 most important things to learn. That you can run these web jobs 3 ways: continuous, schedule, and on-demand. Don't just know you can do that, know what each one's capabilities are and what that actually means. Connection strings. If you're using .NET, you use connection strings. Every other method uses environment variables. Another one they could try and catch you out on a question. Website diagnostics. How many endpoints can you have and how many geographic locations can they be in? 2 endpoints, 3 geographic locations. To configure scale, what additional options do you get when you have a standard level? You can't auto-scale at basic. In nearly every type of service in Azure, auto-scale comes in at the standard level, VMs, everything. So if you add standard level here, you can scale it by a schedule in half-hour increments, or by metric on the instance count or the target CPU. So just remember, standard gives you scaling, auto-scaling. Your hosting plans. I'm not going to test you, but there are four hosting plans available: free, shared, basic, and standard. Virtual machines, IaaS. Here you get 6 sections: deploy, configure, storage, monitor Azure Resource Manager VMs, availability, and scale. And the link will take you to the correct location. So under the first section, you need to think about identifying workloads that can and cannot be deployed and run those workloads, including Microsoft and Linux. You get Linux-type questions. Not detailed, in-depth Linux commands, but just the differences between deploying a VM using Linux and difference in Windows. And more specifically, the differences in connecting to those. So when you create a VM for Windows, you get certain endpoints. When you create one in Linux, you get different. What are they? How do they work? Configuration management. How do you automate configuration management of a VM? So you'd use PowerShell desired state configuration, make sure the VM agent's in there, and then you can use custom scripts as well for Chef, Puppet, or custom script extensions to put the agents for Chef, Puppet, and other methods in there as well. Designing storage. What do we do with our caching? I'm going to cover these in a little while. What do we do with our caching on our disks? How do you cache the disks? What are the options? How do we configure our OS disks to be redundant? Configure shared storage. And what's the difference with on a VM with standard and premium storage? And of course, managed disks have come out, but you won't find those in the objective domain until October. And then monitor ARM VM availability. How do you configure multiple ARM VMs at the same time? Set them up for redundancy, configure application tiers. How do you combine them with a load balancer? And then all about scaling. So we've got virtual machine scale sets, individually scaling. What's the difference between how you scale VMSS and how you scale ordinary machines? Let's go and have a look at those. So application frameworks. You absolutely need to know. This has got a lot of ARM in it, a lot of resource manager, therefore it's based on JSON templates, JavaScript object notification. You need to understand the format of that and how you put your JSON templates together. Excellent resource is the GitHub Azure Quick Start templates. Anybody not seen those? If you go to GitHub, search for Azure, search for Quick Start templates, there are hundreds and hundreds of templates there that will allow you to deploy to Azure. They're also available in the azure.com website in a searchable format, and they'll give you all sorts of information and details about those templates. You can build your templates using the Azure portal now as well, which you'll see shortly. And you can also build them in PowerShell. So if you want to deploy a template using PowerShell, you first of all create the Resource Manager resource group, and then you create a new Azure RM resource group deployment and drop in the template file. And if you've got lots and lots of parameters you want, you can then drop in the parameter file as well. If you don't build parameters into your template, it will just deploy the template. You can also do exactly the same thing using the command line interface. And notice you don't have to download those templates and download and use them. You can deploy them straight using the raw GitHub content. Virtual machine sizes. This is always a really tricky one, because in the last 3 months, Microsoft must have released 4 or 5 different models and brands and types and strategies for virtual machines in Azure. And I bet none of you have got a snapshot of what it was at the point at which all the questions were made. So just understand the major differences between them. And also understand that if you're practicing in a particular region, if you've got to set up your subscription and you're testing this stuff, and you go and try and build a VM and it happens to be in West, I know it's a bad example because they've got everything, let's say Europe North, you might only have half of those available because not every machine is available in every region. So you might not get this huge long list. Those are the basic virtual machines. There's not many of those. The standard virtual machines, you might not get all of those in the region you're looking for. Say again? You're not going to need to know, but if you want to go in and look at what they all currently are, it's worthwhile checking a number of regions. So I wasn't trying to say you need to know what's available in each region, because that's just bizarre. That's There's lots of lists you need, but you definitely don't need that. But you do need to know things like compute-intensive machines. What machines use RDMA and InfiniBand? So if you want something that you want to build a really, really fast disk subsystem in, you're going to pick one of those. So I think it's fair to say, rather than knowing the list, you just need to know the characteristics of each model generation. That's a much better way of looking at them, which is obviously what you get in the Azure portal as opposed to the Classic portal. There is some good news. I heard the other day that the Classic portal closes at the end of November, which means some things are coming out of it. I was told the end of November. If it isn't, great, that's even better. Because that means you've got far less to study and far less to have to go swapping backwards and forwards from.
The service manager portal is gone? The service manager portal is going to be closed?
It's going to go. You should be smiling.
Yes.
Is there a lot of content on the Classic portal? Or is it just yours?
So I took this in beta 3 years ago, and it was all Classic portal. And now I'm allowed to take it again. I will be taking it again here before I leave, just to see the new exam. Historically, as a trainer, it was really difficult. You could take the exam once and never again, unless they change the number. So I would have to say now, there's a little bit, because they're cloud services. It's only available, in fact, it's not. It's now available in there as well. But so it changes regularly. Things like you can now have 4 terabyte disks. Be aware. Be aware. Deploy and connect Linux. Linux you need to connect to with SSH. You can't connect to it with an RDP client. You have to connect to it with SSH. So when it's created, it gives you an SSH endpoint. And you need the SSH keys. You can upload your own keys if you want to. If you want to send your own on-premises image up into Azure, this has always been the same. You create your disk, you create your VM on premises. It has to be a VHD, not a VHDX. So it must be a generation 1 VM you're using. You create that VM, you get it exactly as you want it. You then run sysprep/ubi/generalization, shutdown. And that disk is then sealed and shut down, ready to be first run. You then go to Azure, you create a storage account, you create a container, and you upload the VHD file into the blob storage using the URL that you're given. It takes, unless you're on express route, a significant time. That will then be available to you to add to your custom image list, which then allows you to build any of your VMs based on that image. And you don't have to do that from the GUI. It becomes an image sitting in your list, so you could put that in your ARM template if you wanted to. So you could build your JSON template, add your image to it, and add it to your VM list. If you're going to do that with Linux, it must be one of the endorsed Linux distributions, which change frequently, so you need to keep that up to date in your mind. And you do the same thing. You create a resource group, create a storage account, you get the access keys, you create the container with the access keys that you've just got, and then you upload it again, and you use either of those tools to convert it to a VHD. Implementing images and disks. OS images can be Microsoft images, your images, or partner third-party images. Must be sysprep generalized and read-only. And you can capture your currently running VMs as well. You don't have to upload. So if you do nothing on premises now, which is quite a possibility for a small organization, and you've got one VM running and you want to capture that disk, you can capture that, effectively clone it, put it back in your image set, and use it that way. Your disks, as opposed to images, your OS disks, or your non-OS disks, I should say. You've got 3 choices. When you build a virtual machine, you will tend to have 2 disks, but you can have a third one. And you'll see the graphic in a minute. A disk is always writable in a virtual machine. So whatever disk it is, whether it be the OS, the temp, or the data disk, it's always writable. and they're created during the creation of the disk, or creation of a virtual machine, or when you add a data disk. So this is an image of a storage disk manager running in server management in a VM. It has an OS disk. It's persistent. You're quite fine. It is completely persistent. Everything works. There is a temporary disk. When this shuts down, this disk disappears. You cannot store anything in it and expect it to stay there. One and only warning. You can use it. It's very fast, but you should be using it for transferring stuff, not for storing anything. It's not persistent. The third disk is one that has been attached as a data disk, and that is persistent. The number of disks you can attach depends on the type of VM you have chosen to add. So if you only think you're ever going to need 2 disks, you can choose a particular VM type. If you need great many more, you end up having to create a new VM and move the current data disks to that VM and then add more. Configuration management, you can use PowerShell, obviously, DSC to create your configuration, and you can add the custom scripts. The custom scripts you can add either by PowerShell or you can add in the GUI. Never, ever uninstall the VM agent. You'll have a lot of problems if you uninstall the VM agent. If you use Puppet or Chef, you can use that. If you want to use DSC, you can add custom scripts, and there's now a DSC agent that can add as well. All do similar things. Quite a lot of help within the GUI as well, just to understand what things are. VM resiliency, availability sets. Microsoft keep changing the SLA that you get for a standard single VM. Because Azure is now so resilient and so good, they can now keep upping their SLA for a non-availability set. Be aware of what it currently is. Technically, there is no money-back SLA on a single VM instance. If you want a 99.5 SLA, it needs to be in an availability set. You can add a VM to an availability set that's been created. You can create an availability set when you create the VM. It places all of the VMs in different fault domains. We're going to go into fault domains and update domains in a minute. And you can have 50 VMs maximum in each fault domain. Update domains, maximum's 20, fault domains 3. Defaults are 2 and 5. So if you get a default question, I don't like numbers questions, but some of them are still there. The default number of fault domains is 2, and the default number of update domains is 5. A fault domain means that the VM sits, or the VMs in that fault domain, sit using the same power, the same rack, the same network switch at the top of the rack. So should there be a catastrophic fault, like the cleaner wanders along and kicks the power out of a particular rack, that won't happen in Azure ever, I promise you, because cleaners aren't allowed in there. But if there is a catastrophic fault with a rack, only those VMs will stop, and the other VMs in the other fault domain will not, because they're in a separate rack, a separate switch, and a separate power source. Update domains are slightly different. Update domains aren't based on physical, they're based on knowing where the VMs are, so that when there needs to be an update on the fabric, only one of those update domains will be rebooted at a time. So if there's updates, you'll only lose one at a time. If there's faults, you'll only lose one fault domain at a time. You don't have to work out where any of this is. The Azure Fabric Controller just says the best place to put these at any particular time. I used to get email warnings telling me I had a single instance VM and there is a possibility that it may be shut down over this period, do something about it. I've stopped getting those now because they rarely have to do it. But technically you still have no SLA. Disk caching, quite important, quite useful to know for a question. By default, all OS disks are cached for read and write. By default, host caching is off for data disks that you add. So if you're going to add a machine as a domain controller, you don't want to ever put it on your OS disk, because that's not best practice. And if you put it on a data disk, you really don't want to enable read-write caching on that. So that's a useful potential question you could think about. It's easy to modify using Set Azure RM OS disk or Set Azure RM data disk. For redundancy, we cover redundancy a great deal more in the storage section, but every piece of data ever stored in Azure, by minimum, is stored 3 times in the same region. If you enable geo-redundancy, it adds another 3 in a separate geographical location, which is normally a different region. And it's more, that says here, more than 400 miles away. Actually, in the UK, the 2 data centers aren't 400 miles away, because most of the UK isn't 400 miles away. But you know what? It's far enough away. As with storage accounts, you have local storage, zone storage, and globally redundant storage. GRS is what it will always give you by default, and often, because it's the most expensive, always it's the most expensive, but always also it's the most secure, because you get 3 in one region and 3 in another region. LRS is local. It sits in one region and you get 3 copies. You don't have to interact with any of these. If one fails, it just kicks into the other one. There is no issue, and another one will be created for you. The most expensive is read access geo-redundancy, which means that if the primary region fails, while it's getting itself back up again, or Microsoft are sorting out the disaster recovery of that solution, you have read access to the remote storage, the remote disks. GRS, you don't. There is downtime and you have to wait. Your data's there, but you can't access it until the switchover's happened. Big note there, once you've chosen this, this cannot be changed. So if you choose this and you go for the multi-expensive read access GRS, you are committed to spending that money on those disks while they exist. Monitoring, endpoint monitoring. Exactly the same as the web app. You get 400 error, or it's more than 30 seconds, it's deemed to be down. You can configure alerts on any of those. Conditions, thresholds, alert evaluations. You can choose all of the metrics that you want to choose and send email alerts on them. If you plug all this into OMS, you can then take action on those with PowerShell automation. Here's me choosing CPU percentage, choosing the fact that it's greater than. So if the CPU percentage of this VM goes over 80%, I want to know about it. Send me an email. I can send it to other people as well. Diagnostics on my blob and table storage. I can aggregate them. And I can retain them for 1 day, 7 days, 30, 60, or 90 days. Retention periods are also good for questions. Virtual machine scale sets. Understand how you scale them up and down. Understand how you can create them both in a GUI and also in the PowerShell and CLI. Configure the auto scale on the CPU usage. And there's a whole bunch of other metrics you can use as well, such as network and disk read and writes. Here I set my scale setup, choose the size of each instance, how many I want, whether I want scaling above 100 or not, whether I'm going to use managed disks or non-managed disks, what my public IP address name is, whether it's dynamic or static, and give it a label. If I want to do this, if I want to make changes to this using ARM, I can just change the template and change the capacity property to change the number of virtual machines I'm going to be using. So I can create a scale set and then change it using an ARM template and just redeploy that template, and it will amend that resource. You can optionally choose the auto scale or not when it's created in the Azure portal. There are a number of VMSS templates available in the Quick Start templates if you want to examine those and see the settings. Those Quick Start templates are really useful for understanding the parameters that are in use and understanding the variables they use and the resources they use, so you can understand where they come from and repeat them yourself. Here's my auto-scaling. And schedule scaling. Schedule only works if none of the other conditions match. So, virtual machines. There are 3 ways, the 5 things to know. There are 3 ways to automate VM management: PowerShell, DSC, and your custom script extensions. When load balancing endpoints, you get one public and one private IP. And you can use those for RDP, PowerShell, remoting, and SSH. Access control lists can only be added per endpoint, and you can use PowerShell or the management portal. I'm not sure you can still use the management portal. Fault domains and update domains. Remember, the sort of question you'd get there is, what do they protect against? So the fault domain protects against physical hardware failure, and the update domain protects against OS updates and fabric updates underneath. It's not when you update your machines, it's when Microsoft update the machines underneath that turn your hosts off, which means they have to go off. Geo-replication, understand LRS, ZRS, and GRS, and 2 types of GRS, which we repeat again in storage. Storage covers blobs and Azure files in one section, how we get hold of them, the management of the access, so creating managed shared access signatures and stored access policies. These are really confusing things. Shared access signatures and stored access policies sound fairly similar, do different things, and they work together to give you different features and facilities, like how you can stop things being available at particular times, when you can get it to run out of date. So it's well worth reading up on those and implementing them and testing them so that you understand which does which. SQL databases is in this section, notably in the next set of objectives coming in October. SQL features a little bit more, not very heavily tested here. There are a load of data platform exams in Azure, but SQL is covered here. And implement recovery services. Backup vaults, backup agents, backup and restore data. So blobs, highly scalable, REST interface, and it's stored in the cloud. You can upload, download. It's really worthwhile downloading the new Storage Manager, Storage Explorer for Azure. Very useful. It's an add-on, it's not covered in the exam. Know the difference between block blobs and page blobs, neither of which are very easy to say. A block blob can be up to 200 gigabytes each, and it's the cheapest way of storing stuff, but it's not available for all types of storage. If you want to store disks, they need to be page blobs. And it says here, page blobs up to 1 terabyte. They're read and written in 512-byte pages, so they're ideal for disks for random access. AZ copy is a command line copy file in the Azure command line interface. Very fast, very slick uploading and downloading. But then again, so is the Storage Explorer. Azure Files. Azure Files is a standard SMB3 or SMB 2.1 file storage area that you can make file shares available to your servers, both in Azure and on premises, without having a virtual machine running them. There are some limitations in them. So you can just set a net use in your Azure VM, and it'll give you a new disk to use as the share, which is useful. However, none of the SMB features are supported on that share in the VM. So you can't do NTFS file permissions and all that sort of stuff across that SMB share. So if you want secure storage type stuff, you don't use the share for that. You put a share on the virtual machine itself, put a data disk in the virtual machine, and you can put NTFS permissions. It's not for that. So if you've got an internal library of stuff that isn't secure or everybody's got access to, that's ideal for that. Natively supported. And it supports all the standard file systems, so moves, renames, read and write, and all your changes. So then you have a bunch of decisions to make about where you store stuff and why. So Azure Files is an SMB storage block. Blobs is useful for REST and client libraries, not for disks. And you can access your app data, so it's really useful for putting things in that apps transfer regularly. And data disks will go into page blobs. Here's your manage access, the confusing stuff, shared access signatures and stored access policies. We also have this system of keys. There's primary keys and secondary keys for each of these. If you regenerate both your keys at the same time and don't change keys with other people, everybody loses access to every single thing. Note, keys are used by apps. People are smiling, people have done this. Anybody else other than the couple in the front have done this? I've done it. I've done it. You learn by making mistakes, guys. You never make them again. First VM I ever installed was a domain controller. With a domain controller, what do? You set it to static IP. You go straight into the domain controller and you turn it to a static IP. You lose all ability to communicate with that VM ever again. You never change the IP inside a VM in Azure. Azure does everything for you. Never, ever set it to static. Ever, ever, ever. You can tell it on the outside now it's static. This was 3 years ago when you couldn't do that. What do I do in my VM? Can't get it. Never be afraid to make a mistake. Just hope it doesn't cost you too much money. So, shared access signatures. There are two types, ad hoc and controlled by these policies. It delegates access to the storage account using the keys, primary and secondary access keys. And it gives you a web address for that account. If you have that shared access signature, you have access to that storage account, which is a good thing if that's what you want, and a bad thing if it's not. So we have stored access policies, which means we can limit this down and put it at lower levels, and we can also put time limits on it. So you can remove people from access at a particular time. So a customer wants access to something for 4 hours, you give him a shared access policy for that, eliminate it after 4 hours, he's got 4 hours to download it, he can do that. Note, you can only have 5 of those policies per container or queue or table within the storage. And reminding you again, don't regenerate both keys at the same time. Of course, if you do regenerate one, send it out, let it ripple through, then regenerate the other. Retention policies, from 1 to 365 days. If it's 0, there is no retention policy. Understand the difference with the levels in your logging and what you get when you get verbose logging. Onto the lovely subject of SQL databases. Any data platform people in the room? Very few. I'll try not to make many SQL mistakes. So, the PAS version of SQL does pretty much all of the redundancy stuff for you. You just choose what you want and it'll do it. It works brilliantly, and the features of being able to restore to a point in time and restore your databases instantly is really cool. So you've got geo, restore, and point in time. You can use that for archiving your database when you're importing and exporting. Understand the difference between a backpack and a DACpack, which for the data people is really, really easy. One exports the schema, one exports the schema and the data. They can be used for different things. So, for example, a backpack that gives you schema and data, you can't import that to modify the schema, but you've got the schema in it. So if you want to import something and just change the schema, you need to use a DACpack for that. Azure Recovery Services. This is something that has just ballooned in the last 6 months in the way it's been working, which makes it more difficult for you answering questions because you're working with the stuff now and it may not necessarily be exactly as it appears for you. However, we're going to concentrate on backup vaults and backup agents. So we create a backup vault and we can back up our files from Windows Server to Azure, whether it be on premises or in Azure itself. You create the vault in a specific region, and it gives you something called vault credentials, which replaces the certificates you would need. If an item is protected, that means it's backed up. I don't know why it doesn't say it's backed up, but it's protected. A protected item is a backed up item. And you can go all the way back to 2008 Service Pack 1 to be a protected virtual machine. You're asked for a passphrase when you set this up. You need to remember that passphrase for the original, to encrypt the original. You don't have to recover the server to the same DNS, or if anybody's using NetBIOS name, you can recover it to a new instance and a new name. PowerShell there, set OB recovery. And the backup agent. You can deploy the backup agent using PowerShell. It installs all the way down to 2008 Service Pack 1 and on all the 64-bit Windows 7, 8, 8.1 and 10. If anybody is using DPN, you need to have the update rollup 2 for DPM SP1. It's in there now, yeah. Wasn't, but is. So the backup agent allows you to do files and folders, and you can also do full server backup as well. So bare metal backup and retain checkpoint times for restoring at a particular time. So the 5 storage things you need to know. Block blobs, up to 200 gig each. Page blobs, up to 1 terabyte, and they are for virtual machine disks. Shared access storage. Delegated access, so that is your SAS and stored access policies. Shared access signatures, stored access policies. Really work on those. How do you limit your permissions to individual blobs, queues, and tables using those? What's the format of the web address it gives you, the URI it gives you to access? If you look at that format, if you look at the URI you're given, when you create these things, you can determine what level of what you've got access to and what level of read, write, or not you have to that storage. And also the time is in there. Understand the logging levels for blobs, tables, and queues. Know what verbose logging gives you. SQL import and export, backpack. data and schema, DAC pack, only schema. It's not a data exam, so they can't ask you many detailed SQL questions, so the number of SQL questions are fairly limited. Deploy backup agent. Active Directory. Active Directory has made huge steps in the last few months. We're going to talk about directory integration, application access, integrating application, and B2C and B2B. Anybody still on DirSync? Good. DirSync, AD Sync, AAD Connect, AAD Connect 2, 3, and 4 with all the new goodness in it. Make sure you're on AAD Connect. So, understand what you need to do all the different levels of integration, whether it just be using AAD Connect to put your on-premises credentials or on-premises users into your Azure Active Directory with a password hash and no write back. What do you have to do to have it fully authenticated on-premises with password write back? What do you need to do? Now, it's tricky because in preview at the moment is the AAD Connect pass-through. But if you know AAD Connect pass-through and you know ADFS, you know both the options. Shouldn't get questions with preview. You shouldn't, but that doesn't mean you won't, because you don't know when the preview. I mean, certain things like went for preview for 12, 18 months. It's almost like a full product, isn't it? So we've got synchronization, we've got federation, know which one is which, what you need for each. Don't necessarily know how to implement ADFS. It's not an ADFS exam, but you need to know what it gives you. SaaS apps, thousands and thousands of single sign-on software as a service applications in the application gallery. Really easy to set up. Go and build yourself a few. Get yourself an Azure Active Directory, connect to a few, connect to your Twitter account and your Facebook account, see how it works, see how the password rollover works, understand whether you need to implement MFA for it, what you need to implement MFA, which is obviously either AAD Premium or you buy the service. Hint, don't ever buy the service, because AAD Premium doesn't cost a great deal more and gives you lots more. Understand the different protocols you can use to connect to it, and the different levels of integration with password and resets depending on the application you're connecting to. Once you've done that, you can just create that for a group, add the users to the group, and everybody gets access. The typical one here is Twitter. Lots of organizations have multiple people using their Twitter account. They get fired on the Friday. Still got access to the Twitter account. Here you can just not give them access to the Twitter account. And indeed, this system can manage the password for Twitter or for any application, which means the users don't ever know the password and they can't change it. Currently, you have to authenticate these against an organizational account. So that's an Azure AD account rather than the Microsoft account, currently. And an organizational account can also be an on-premises Active Directory account that is integrated into your Azure AD. Cute graphic of the process of integrating it. Understand all the methods of being able to do this and what actually happens with this authentication process. We then have the Azure B2C, business to consumer. It allows people to access your applications using their currently created Google, Facebook, Twitter IDs, and it just creates a link to your Azure AD, so they don't have to create a brand new account. You get, when you've integrated it properly, they get 2 or 3 options. Create an account if you allow them to, or use one of their commercial consumer applications. So it gives you self-service, seamless identity in there. Available Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, LinkedIn, and a few more. You can do that with MFA as well if you want to. And there's a load of links on that slide that will help you get through that process. B2B allows you, it's sort of federation without the federation piece. Understand how to do that. Very few questions. If you look at the objective domain, it's just one item in there. So you offer him an invitation. If he chooses it, or if he chooses to ignore it, it's just never accepted. If he accepts it, you get a test account created. It's then DNS verified. When they take over that token, it changes the DNS to verified. And the tenant can then choose to keep the existing password or enforce on-prem federation if available. Quick table here of when you would use what for AD, B2B, or B2C. Not going to read through it, but it's useful to go through at your leisure. Another table of AD capabilities. And your 5 things to know about Active Directory. Absolutely understand Azure AD Sync. Understand the Identity Manager. Understand the other end of it. Once you've installed Active Directory Connect, Azure AD Connect, you've got MIM the other end, just go and play with it. It's not the world's most friendly tool, but go and play with it, see what you can do with it, how you can limit, he's laughing, he's used it, how you can limit individual groups of users, how you can limit the attributes that are passed back into Azure. Don't get too deep into it because you'll get lost. Adding custom domains. First of all, create your CNAME, then deploy it. Configuring SaaS. And if you're like me, 90% of that sentence or those words underneath SaaS are gobbledygook. Just understand the differences between SAML, WS-Fed, and OpenID connection. And there as well. And go and play with the Graph API. It's very powerful. Virtual networks. Nearly through, folks. 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I'll try and get you some questions at the end as well. So we need to configure our virtual network, modify the configuration, and design and implement it. And then we look at multi-site and hybrid networks. It's very difficult to start understanding ExpressRoute in detail unless you've got one, and 99% of people haven't got one. If you're in an environment that does have one, you're very lucky, and you'll probably get all the ExpressRoute questions right. Just spend some time on ExpressRoute because it's one of the well-questioned topics in the exam. How do you configure static IPs? How do you verify they're free? So we do a test Azure RM static VNet IP. If it's available, it'll tell you. How do you configure your internal load balancer? If you've already created a network that's configured for an affinity group, which is a very old network, you can't put an ILB on it. Affinity groups is something that should have gone away a long time ago and may well go away very soon. Network security groups, essentially ACLs, access control lists. How do you configure them, amend them? What is in the default rules? You won't see the default rules unless you click Show me the default rules. So you'll think, I've got no rules. And there's a little I. You just click it and it will show you the default rules. It's effectively what you always get when you create an ACL. The default rule is deny everything at a certain level, which may not be what you want. So you can choose a name, you can choose the priority for this, where it's coming from, what protocol you're going to allow. You can choose all ports, one port, many ports, whatever you want to choose. Whether it allows a destination anywhere, whether it's just allowed for a particular subnet, or whether it's allowed for tags. Azure has tagging. You can tag any resources, you can tag anything pretty much. And if you attach this, it will allow access to a tagged resource. Then the destination port range, and whether it's a deny ACL or an allow one. There are no custom roles for network support groups built in. However, it's really easy to create one. Just give it those permissions. There's lots of custom NSG permissions. You just go and build yourself a new role. So if you've got one man in your organization that just does NSGs, you can build him a role for himself. User-defined routes. When would you use them? What do they do? You've got your system routes already within a VNet, VM to internet, through peering and gateways. Why would you use a UDR? Well, you'd use a UDR for forcing tunnels to internet on or off premises, to internet or on premises. If you're going to use a network appliance, you might need to use a user-defined route for that. And if you want to direct your subnet traffic higher, you might need to force it up using a UDR. You can create that using a template. They're available on the quick templates. Dive in and have a look. Application gateways. Not much to say about application gateways. Understand the SSL offloading and how to build a custom health probe for it. Instance count will always start at 2. Choose your network. Choose an IP address. And in it goes. Network security groups. Important note. You can put them on a network interface card or a subnet in ARM. You can put them directly onto a VM if it was an ASM VM. That was the only way you could use NSGs in ASM originally. Create them with PowerShell, interface, and CLI as well. Create your internal load balancer with PowerShell. It's add Azure RM internal load balancer. And you can import your network config. So you do it in the new portal, use an ARM template, or you can export it from an existing one as well. Site to site is the easiest method to connect on-premises network, site to site. Express route. Just do it's really easy. That's really expensive. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. Watch some videos. Express route's really difficult to get a grip on unless you've seen people use it or used it, so do your best with that. ARM templates. I've mentioned ARM templates as we've gone through, so I shall flick through some of this. We need to implement them, control access to them, and design role-based access. Every single resource you create in the Azure portal can be exported as a template. You can't store all of them, but they can be exported as a template. You now have a template library in your own portal. So you can say, I've created that, save the template. So when you get all the way through the journey in the blades to create a VM, right at the bottom, before you buy it, do you want to see the template? So you click it, it'll take you to the template, save it, name it, delete, cut that, go back, and then create the VM. And it will save the parameters, it'll save the JSON, it'll save everything that will then allow you to rebuild, redeploy, or even just learn how you did it. Yes, I ought to say, actually, I missed a bit there. So for resource groups, choose things that will have the same life cycle. If you want to build an app that's going to be all dealt with at the same time and live and die at the same time, put it in a resource group. If things are going to have different life cycles, don't necessarily keep them in the same resource group. One of the benefits of resource groups is going delete. And if you do that and things aren't dead, you're in trouble for the things you didn't want to kill. You can also scope access to them. So if you've got lots of groups that do things, you can give role-based access to just one resource group. There you go, fill your boots, use that. Resource groups can contain resources from anywhere, but a resource can only live in one resource group. So a resource group can have resources from any region you like, but the resource can only exist in one resource group at a time. You can add and remove them at any time, at will. Done that. So here's the template. If you go into your portal, click Browse or More, whichever it says today, type template, you'll get template deployment. It'll give you a bit of an explanation. It'll say it's got no resources, so you edit it. And it will give you a blank JSON template with the first 4 sections: schema, content, version, parameters, and resources. You can then go and add variables, add resources, and add new parameters at your will. If you're not really used to doing this, I would recommend you click the up arrow there, which says Quick Start Templates, and that will interrogate GitHub for all of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Quick Start templates, which could be as much as a 6 VM SharePoint farm. Build it for me. Now, if you can afford to do that in your Azure, fine, go ahead and do it. But you'll then be able to see how this template's put together. In terms of the Quick Start templates, if it starts with 1, it's fairly easy. If it starts with 2, it's a bit more complicated. If it doesn't have a number, it wasn't written by Microsoft, and it's a community one. They are all checked and tested. However, as with everything you ever get from anywhere, test it first, look at it, explore it, know what it is. That's a template loaded up. ARM policies, controlled by role-based access. The policy definitions sit in JSON, and you assign those policies to either a resource group, or a subscription. Fairly simple. And you give role-based access custom roles to individual areas that you want. Choose the area, go to Identity Access Management, give people access to it. You can limit the access to individual types of resources as well. And now the good stuff. If you want to take this exam before it changes, this is what it's going to change to. I apologize for the 7 slides of changes. That link takes you to the new OD. It's a OneDrive link to a file on my OneDrive because it's not live yet. So, manage containers with Azure Container Service, including lots of Docker and Kubernetes and all sorts of things in there, including OMS. If you don't use OMS, you need to learn how to use OMS as well. How do you implement the Azure Container Registry? Automation, lots of PowerShell runbooks and automation, a whole new section for it, using DSC as well. That pleases me, that's PowerShell. Collect and analyze data. Azure Log Analytics, that's pointing you again towards OMS. Manage Azure identities. We've got about 2 minutes left, but we've got lots and lots of Azure identity stuff here. So Azure AD Connect Health. How do you use that? How do you implement it? The new Azure Active Directory Domain Services, which is now available for ARM resources, which is good, means we can now test it in here. So these are the new things. Some things will be dropping out, some of the older stuff, but this is what's brand new. I haven't done the whole new, this is just the new stuff. The link takes you to everything, okay? It would have been about 20 pages if I'd given you everything. AD Connect as well, so there's a lot more about AD Connect and implementing that. AD B2C and B2B, which wasn't in at all before. Or in detail at all before. Most of them were preview then. I didn't leave 10 minutes, I'm afraid. I left 2 minutes. Sorry. But my recommendation really is you've got 50% off exams. That's $80. Go and take it. See what happens. If you haven't got $80 and you want a bit of a help, go and buy the replay, which is a little bit more than the full price normally, but gets you a second exam. And if you don't want to do either of those, get next door and take the measure up test and see how you get on, which is free, which is normally a lot of dollars for a month. Lots and lots of other resources in here. Do evaluate the session, please. Mark will be very grateful. I'm going to take it back to the first slide with my contact details on, should you want to make any contact. Thank you very much.